April the 6th, 2025. Guys, it is 11:28 a.m. Central Time here in Central Mississippi. Last night was quite an exciting event. Guys, at 3 o'clock, 3 a.m., we had tornado warnings all around us here, and we've been hit, just a few months ago. And so there's a lot of praying going on for our Father to lift these storms up. Not only this one, we had two more just north of us. And it lifted. It did not, as far as I know, touch down anywhere. Now, we did lose almost 20 people in these storms yesterday and last night. They're moving through Alabama and Georgia now, so be careful as the heat of the day rises. But what you're looking at now is what's called geofencing. And it's not real clear, but it's a big park. You got a blue area and an orange area, and what that can be used for, very simply, is to, if you are in the park with your kids and one of them leaves this area with their phone or their tracker, whatever you have, then it will alert your phone, right? Or if they come back into it. Now, commercially, it's used, say, for instance, in a big shopping complex with many stores. The owner of one store can tell when you enter his particular franchise or whatever it is, and actually where you are at in the store, plus when you get a little higher level of sophistication, when they see you approaching an area, so you're going down a walkway and there's stores on both sides in the complex, and you're about to, say, get close to a food shop. Well, that food shop can send out an ad to your phone as you approach it. Things like that. It can be used for good or bad things. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in the video, is geofencing. And in this case, it's very high tech. We're not going to find out exactly all the techniques that they use to do it. I'm sure that GPS satellite had a lot to do with it. And then you have a perimeter that has to be set up. And what has happened over the weekend, well, let's go back to last weekend. You had the Tesla protest. Then you saw massive amounts of people come out, probably, if you added all of them up, several thousand. And it was an increase over the Tesla protest. And they become violent. You saw many people get arrested. They burnt Teslas. They keyed them, kicked them, busted windows in. A lady got injured yesterday. Someone threw a big brick or rock through her window, stone, like it weighed about 20 pounds, through the windshield, and it hurt her pretty bad. They're psycho. They're demented. What's happening now is the Democrats know that they have lost, so they're going to try to throw every dollar they have at these protests to try to take down the U.S. The money that we're seeing coming in is from a lot of non-government organizations that have very nefarious methods and reasons. And some of the money for the protests now is being tracked to overseas. But what they did, guys, is they let them, the protests go on. I'm sure there may have been a few arrests here and there, if it got violent. But they tracked everyone that participated in all the Tesla protest, and then this weekend with all of the tariff protests, the protest on shipping the illegals, the hate Trump, we'll call it hate Doge and hate MAG and hate Trump protests, were very large, but they were paid and they were bussed in. What they found out through the geofencing technique of the areas of the protest was exactly who it was, who they were talking back and forth with, who they were getting close to that was handing out the signs and the money, and that most of these people, even the older ones, had been at many BLM protests and riots, and many others. It's just a group of people, a lot of them probably now have retired or have been fired, like from groups like the NSAID, remember, or USAID, excuse me, that got defunded because so much money was going to different places that taxpayer money that was going to everywhere but where it needed to go. So right now, they can't use that U.S. aid money and all the other grifting money to do these protests. So they're bringing in, of course, the Soros group, and who, by the way, they say his son is running it, and different groups like that, different nations that don't like the tariff policies. And they're being paid more than likely by someone here. But anyway, they've geo-fenced all the protests. They know now where the money's coming from. They know now who is participating, even from overseas. Like I said, let's read a little bit about that. Now, I'm sure some of you kind of kept up with some of the protests. There's different YouTubers that were broadcasting from different cities and things like that. And again, they were very large. But the buses would unload. Someone would hand out the signs, and everyone was paid, things like that, to be there. And so it is what they're calling a color revolution. They say they're geo-fenced every event. The Democrats caught staging another inorganic color revolution operation against Trump. When they say inorganic, of course, what they're saying is that these people just on their own volunteer to show up, to buy their own bus tickets, make their own signs that are all very similar from all over the nation. That's organic, but it has nothing to do with that. It's a bunch of libtarded people that have nothing else to do, probably on some kind of medication, or have been indoctrinated in the education systems for several generations to be totally communist, Marxist, libtarded. But it says far-left billionaire-funded non-government organizations, or NGOs, closely aligned with the rudderless and imploding Democratic Party. Perfect description. You ever broke a rudder on a boat? I have. And imploding Democratic Party. So they are like at the end of the battle, they're throwing everything they can at it. And so what is happening on the conservative side is like the art of war, which geofencing is a very high-tech, modern form of the art of war. But the other half of that is when the enemy is publicly humiliating themselves and destroying themselves and losing all respect, let them do it. But in this case, it's easy to keep up with and put a stop to the heads of the demons. It says that this rudderless and imploding Democratic Party has been waging a psychological warfare operation against the American people. Framed as grassroots, the party of hate and violence, evident in their Tesla takedown color revolution aimed at killing Tesla to pressure Elon Musk on Doge. It has been building momentum in recent weeks into an anti-Trump protest this weekend. The goal is to manufacture the illusion that Trump is wildly unpopular, leveraging a vast network of dark money funded NGOs, the same ones that were shuffling everyone across the border. And these NGOs, they supply rent of protesters to rallies nationwide. A lot of people are going to be talking about the, anti-Elon Musk, Doge, and Donald Trump protest yesterday. Why? Now remember, they are all liars. First of all, Trump is more popular than he's ever been, ever. And so the renter-protester deal just is not going to work out for them. We're not buying it. It says, make sure to send everyone this so they know these were paid protesters. And this is from Laura Loomer, who's been really behind the scenes and getting some of the deep state alligators out of the swamp lately. You've been keeping up with it. But anyway, she wants to make sure that just what I'm doing now, you share this video, talk about it, make sure they know when you hear someone walk up with a glazed look in their dull eyes and say, wow, I couldn't believe all these people hate Trump that bad. Then you are pre-armed to say, guys, don't be so stupid. Don't you know they were paid to be there because they have nothing else to do? And a lot of them have been defunded because the Department of Education, USAID and all of the other groups that are being taken down because they were major grifters on the U.S. taxpayer. They were loading buses with pre-made signs to hand out transporting. There's links here. I'm going to link this article. And it says proof that none of the anti-Trump protesters today are organic. Democrats bust them in after paying them for their time. MAGA always shows up for free because we love our president. It's not that we love our president per se. We love our country. We want it to be free and prosperous. And again, free is prosperous. Anyway, there's nothing for the Democrats to love except money. So I thought about this yesterday before I knew they were geofencing, just to be honest with you. And my thoughts then were that we'll let them protest because we know that it's, again, deep state money coming from all over the planet until they're broke. Let them pay these people. As long as they're in, unless they start burning things down again, let them protest until it bankrupts the Soros groups and the other ones. Now we know the geofencing is there, and so it really adds a whole new perspective to this deal. In other words, they know exactly who's doing what, when they did it, everything. And the people are so, if you were going to do this, let me say, you might not want to take your cell phone, or you may want to have it in some type of tracking device or something that would block tracking. Aluminum foil works very well. Wrap it 3 or 4 times. But you're not going to be getting your command orders, and they're not smart enough to understand this. But when you're dealing with Starlink, by the way, we have Starlink satellites communication on our website at vpearthwatch.com. It's internet, and we went from AT&T at paying $110 a month for the business account and getting lucky to get 25 megs download. We plugged it up and got 256 megs of download. Unbelievable. Anyway, the technology behind that, more than likely, with that many, what we used to call birds in the sky, these satellites, now they're launching more every day. They can track everything. Now, it can be used for nefarious means, and so it's important to kind of understand how this works in case the other side starts using this technology in the future. So again, it can be used for good or evil. Right now, it's locating a lot of evil. And they're talking about protesters were caught being busted in to D.C. And they asked one guy on an interview, "What are you here for?" And he said he had to pull out a piece of paper, guys, with a little sign and read it. While he was there, he had no idea. That's just a little tidbit in there to tell you how the situation is. In other words, understand greed is a terrible thing. But when you use greed, psychology, and the media and their lies, it becomes a deadly combination if you're not careful. But I think we're going to see possibly the salvation of the nation as we know it because of this geofencing technique. They've rounded them up, and they've been doing it much longer than what we've been told about. In other words, it goes back, they knew during some of the BLM protest who was behind it, what's going on. And I guess that they knew really quickly they had to get Trump out. It just didn't work out very long for them. But they're calling now for a prosecution for whoever is funding it. How will they know? Geofencing. Now, they already knew about NGOs, guys, that were funding the protest even last week and before. And it says, ahead of the anti-Trump protest, we uncovered the Democratic Party's NGO war machine, totaling 186 NGOs, listen, unions, and other radical leftist groups. There's a list of them that supported Saturday's mass mobilization efforts of renter protesters and, of course, grassroots component of the protest, mainly old, white, angry liberals. And we saw that in a lot of the protests. I mean, I guess the young people They're more, I guess they would be into a different part of that army, if you understand. Democrats activate the NGO machine for weekend color revolution against Trump. Late Friday, MSNBC's Rachel Maddow, the queen of misinformation, openly boasted about the Democratic Party's color revolution operation, even giving airtime to Ezra Levin on the NGO Indivisible Project, who attempted to convince the audience that the anti-Musk and anti-Trump protests are organic. It's time for the FBI and that group to go into these media outlets, and they're already starting to sue them for a lot of money, but go in and actually make arrest and handcuff them and prosecute them, because these lies are national security issues. It says Terra, the Soros-funded Indivisible, is openly admitting they are behind the 1,300 paid protests, 1,300 protests happening today in all 50 states. Democrat billionaires are funding these uprisings, and they should be held accountable for the violence and the vandalism. Now, one of the analysts of all this information, a guy named Tony Saruga, revealed the protests in Chicago drew 7,500 attendees, with 92% having attended 5 or more Kamala Harris rallies. I didn't know she had that many. Anyway, Antifa BLM events and pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian protest. He noted that CBS News attempted to claim thousands were present, while organizers inflated the number to 30,000. Organizers are claiming 30,000. CBS states a vague thousands. 92% have attended 5 or more Harris rallies. Again, Antifa, BLM, pro-Hamas, or pro-Palestinian protest. For more insight into what data we also looked at, in addition to GPS location data, would be demographic and psychographic. This is important, guys. One of the reasons I'm doing the video, because this technology now is being used to root out a lot of evil, but it can be used just the opposite way, just as easy. So be aware of what geofencing is, and of course, you know, if you walk into a Super Bowl, all your advertising or anything out like that is going to have to do with somehow them making more money off of you being there, right? Or the sponsors. So that's just how it works. And actually, geofencing could be used in drone attacks. You know what I'm talking about. It says, for more insight into what data we'd look at, in addition to GPS location data, we would be demographic and psychographic data using over 6,000 different databases, like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Pew Research Center, market research firms like YouGov, Experian, which is credit card scores, I guess, specialized tools, consumer surveys, social media platforms like X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Demographic data includes basic characteristics like age, gender, income, education, or the education level, occupation, marital status, family size, ethnicity, and where people live, city or state. Psychographic data dives deeper into your lifestyle, values, attitudes. Think of that. Interests, personality traits, social class, activities, and how they make purchasing decisions. For example, it might show if someone values sustainability, or enjoys outdoor activities, or participates in community activism. And so now you know, and you probably have heard, that's how all the thousands of J6ers that never got near the Capitol building were tracked down. It says, while demographic data is straightforward, psychographic data can reveal sensitive personal details like beliefs or even life goals. Additionally, by cross-pollinating each device with other devices regularly within close proximity to the target device, we're able to build a detailed profile for each target. We talked about this several months ago in AI building an avatar of each of us. It says we've identified the 6 groups. Once again, this is based on a very sophisticated algorithm that looks at the behavioral metrics for each device, including the physical one-to-one proximity to leaders and paymasters from these groups in the past. Disruption Project, Rise and Resist, that's another one. Indivisible Project, Troublemakers is another one. The Democratic Socialists of America and the Muslim Brotherhood. They're all part of this disruption. And some of them list here 501c nonprofits. Troublemakers are for profit, and but most of them say they're nonprofit. But I think there's a lot of NGO grifting going on between all of this and supporting it, and that's why we're seeing a lot of the shutdowns. Since the money flow is stopping, then we're seeing a lot of other things stop. But now if they get these paymasters, that will end a lot of that also, because the people cannot afford to ride around the nation and protest. A lot of them are being laid off. Thank goodness for Miss McMahon that ended the Department of Education, put it back in the state's hands, because that was one of the big problems, with the libtardedness in this nation. Said they also have identified 11 additional groups paying for protests, demonstrations, and riots. Many are linked to foreign bad actors in countries funding terrorism. The organizers are claiming 30,000 against CBS states there was a vague 1,000, but the GPS, Geo-Fenced, said there's 7,498 mobile devices. Of course, maybe everyone doesn't have a phone, but that's very rare these days. 92% have attended, again, 5 or more events from the Antifa, Harris, Biden, all of that. Far more insight into what data we also look at in addition to GPS location, guys, and that is that particular psychographic. It says Saruga, the guy that's analyzing the data, from the Chicago rally closely mirrors the protest in Denver, he said a few weeks earlier, in which he pointed out 84% of the same devices, phones or tablets, whatever, were present and had attended 9 or more Kamala Harris rallies. Again, the same group of protests. They're all the same. Inorganic GPS data reveals Bernie Sanders, AOC, and the anti-oligarchy rally was full of serial protesters. There's some of your paymasters right there. Saruga warned the Democratic Party, the GPS, we have geo-fenced every event. This is not going to end well for the NGOs and the nonprofits below. We have geo-fenced everything. In the past, each received money from either ActBlue or USAID. USAID has been taken down, and they really threw a fit about that, guys. They're shutting down groups all over the world that were getting money, our taxpayer money, from USAID. Now, I haven't heard about ActBlue, or if I have, I don't remember. If someone in the comments knows about that, or maybe you can look it up, they may be also in trouble. But the disruption, the project, the legal status is unclear, likely operating illegally. Rise and Resist is one of them, and Indivisible is the name of another, operating illegally. The American people need to understand that the Democratic Party has deployed color revolutions, psychological operations disguised as popular uprisings, using renter protesters to manufacture artificial sentiment. You've got to include the media. It is important to note that U.S. intelligence agencies use these same statecraft operations to topple governments overseas. The problem here is that the Democratic Party's color revolution operation could gain enough momentum, just like the color revolution 1.0, the BLM riots. It says this summer that could get that momentum up to 100%, or he's sure that there will be massive riots, anarchy, looting, burning, and violent attacks, adding, our nation will soon be under a brutal attack by filthy, communist, scumbag, satanic, evil traitors. Prepare, they are organizing now. So guys, that's why I wanted to do the video. Be aware of where you're at, especially in the big cities. anywhere there's going to be these big riots or not. We don't really have that many here in this small state of Mississippi. Not very many large towns, and we love it that way. The couple of big towns we have are just as corrupt as all the other ones in the nation. But they're just not as big, but they have as much corruption per capita, I guarantee you. And they've been overrun a long time ago. But we're watching this, guys. Pay attention to it. Share it. I will link to this article. You can come in here and click on some of these videos and some of the links and the list of the unions that are involved in paying for this. And the unions is where this needs to start, because they need to go in and shut this down. If you're trying to take America down, you don't need to be a union here. But this geofencing may be the dragnet that was needed. And they may have, if they've already looking at going back to 9 different protests, they may have the information they need to make a large dent and cut a big section of cancer out of this entire group. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.